young woman here, Brianna Runaway, taking our minutes. And she's the one responsible for the minutes and the agendas and, yes, I try to do all I can to see who's doing it, helping out.
Thank you in advance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment, so I guess the next thing is, you're up. I'm gonna graduate here.
I'm going to let you scroll through that, share your own pace on that. I know.
Great. So tonight, the Community Preservation Committee is bringing ahead of you a really robust portfolio of projects. It's the most robust offering that I've seen in my 5 years on the board. We have just over 2.1 million recommended projects. We have 15 projects, I believe, that have been approved by CPC to bring to annual town meeting. That 2.1 million recommended projects will leave 2.6, which is a real healthy balance in our account. We have, with the proposed 27 budget, we've maintained the 10% minimum requirement for, or we've met or exceeded the 10% requirement for open space, affordable housing, and historic preservation. One of our lovely members here tonight in support of us. Thank you, Lee. Okay, so what I thought I would do is run through all the projects first, and then if there's any questions, we can them all of you. So in the category of affordable housing, the Life Skills Management Program is an annual contract. That's an ask of $56,400, and that will continue the program run by the Health and Human Services Department, offering financial literacy, tax services, career readiness, support for up to 35 members. We have had 15 served last year. In the last 6 months of the year, they did 149 services. So it's a robust program. We do have capacity for more. This is to keep that program going for another year.
You want questions as you go, or?
I was thinking at the end, but
It's whatever you want.
Okay,
Just
sure.
wanna make sure that
let's do them all at the end. The Regional Housing Services Office, this is another annual contract in the amount of $45,000. That's to pay for the regional housing affordable, or the regional housing services consultant, which that is the administrative support and affordable housing services for 51 homes and 5 large rental properties in Bedford. The next piece is the MAHT trust transfer. It's a request of $500,000, and this is to purchase or buy down future affordable housing projects in Bedford, hopefully 2 with this $500,000. They are looking at the Carlisle development, the Carlisle Road development. That would be preferable because it's the soonest one coming available. But we're intentionally writing it a little more blanket so that if something were to come up in between now and when those are developed, we can jump on that as well. In the category of historic preservation, up in the right-hand corner, you'll see some of the archival records that are in need of preservation. This is something that you've seen multiple times. Ashley Dollard, our town archivist, has done a really great job of choosing items that she feels are important and in very big disrepair. This year is an ask of $29,700, which is the valuation lists from 1811 to 1859, and 2 volumes of the annual reports from 1876 to 1895. The records are great to have preserved, but if we can't properly temp control the vault that they're living in, it's kind of all for naught. And right now, the archival vault, which is in the downstairs of this building, you can see just below the archives that are in disrepair. It's a much larger room than I realized it was. It's vault down in the first floor of this building, it currently has to be manually turned on or off, or humidity control. And so we really want to make that so we can program it, it can stay consistent to save the items that we have in there from future disrepair, and that will just keep up actually some work. Historic property interpretive signage is the next ask, and that is a $30,000 ask for 14 historic locations in town. Interpretive signage are what you can see at, say, the Depot Park, where someone can come up to, read about what they're standing in front of. It really helps describe the history of that particular location or item. So this is for, some of those 14 locations are Old Town Hall, Bedford Springs, the Old Reservoir, the Old Burying Ground, so some really prominent pieces in areas in town. The lower two pictures are of the Bedford Public Library. This is for, this ask of $75,000 is for pattern painting walls in the front historic section of the public library. This was last done in 1999, and while we have incredibly talented interior painters on our facilities staff, this room is in need of an outside consultant based on, you can see in the right-hand picture. The front section is vaulted ceilings, it's 2 stories high, sometimes 2.5 high. It's just out of the, we're going to need some specialized equipment, and that's what makes the price tag jump up there. But unfortunately with paint, when you do one wall or one section, you really have to do the whole room so that it matches, and that's what that, that price tag is for. Also in the categories of historic preservation is, this one's really neat. I'm excited to see this one come to life. In the new fire station, we are hoping to have the front lobby be a little bit like a museum. And this is an example of what it could look like in the top right corner. But we have a number of historic pictures and signage, and even the eagle that's downstairs on its stage in the read room. Those items are in need of rehabilitation, restoration, to help preserve them and bring them back to life. There are photos and other items of historic value to the fire station that we're looking to have updated and put into that building when it opens. That is the request of $25,000. Next, the Old Town Hall HVAC replacement. That is for the design piece. That is an ask of $136,500. It's for the study and design of the existing HVAC system to determine the proper replacement that will dovetail with the town's energy policies and really help us be able to keep that on controls that are automated. We can control separate floors better than we can currently, and just make it a lot more efficient. The last piece is the town common rehabilitation. You remember last year we funded the design piece of this project. This is for the build and construction. It's an ask of $830,000. This will refurbish the down common in advance of the 300th anniversary. It will improve circulation patterns. The walkways that are currently trip hazards and not ADA compliant will turn to ADA compliant pavers. There will be new trees, new seating areas, the monuments will get a facelift, and new fence rails around the property.
And sidewalks.
The sidewalks are not covered in the CBC funds, but DPW is handling that, yes. It will.
In the capital.
Yeah, in the capital fund.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
I'm looking for it.
So many people are. It will be beautiful. For open space and recreation, there's athletic field fencing that is an ask of $50,000. That is for primarily Page, E-Field, which is next to the Tot Lot, and A-Field, which is at the high school. That's for first, third baseline fencing to help errant balls stay out of the way of the visitors and the people coming to watch the games. And if there's anything remaining, we will look to the other fields, but those are the top 3 priority. The next ask is for the Mattie Lord Sculpture Garden repair, which is the sculpture right in the cul-de-sac, a little traffic circle right in between the town common and the town center building, the town hall and town center building. You'll see down below, we're looking to have that monument refurbished, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be repainted, and it's also gonna be raised up so that it's actually like less of a trip hazard. As interesting as that sounds, like raising it up and kind of making the edges more prominent will help. And then the pavers will be fully replaced, and the garden itself will remain fully accessible. It is accessible right now because it has ramps, and it will be remaining in that same fashion.
You'll also see in that refresh some picnic tables, new metal benching, and updated garden beds. The pavers that you see there are brick. They will be replaced with ones that are similar, if not exact, to the ones from the common, so it'll just be a nice activity there. And then I'm really excited about this one, the Springsford Park playing field redesign. This is $105,800 for the phase 1 project, which is survey, landscape architecture, civil, geotechnical, and electrical engineering services to convert what is now one soccer field and one unplayable baseball field to 2 soccer fields with level grading, no more raised and boulders, much better parking in the same footprint, so it will allow for more parking. No trees will be harmed in the rework of these fields, but fields are hard to come by in our town, and we really want to make these more playable. Also in open space and recreation is the Bedford High tennis and basketball courts. So up in the right corner, you'll see pictures of the current controls that are 30 years old. This is an ask for $155,000. It will do to replace the outdoor lights, the controls at the 5 tennis courts and 2 basketball courts. They're past their useful life currently. This will allow them to be on the same electronic system as others and scheduling system, so it can be done by an app now, whereas now we're doing it manually. And this will, I don't recall the timeline on this, but is it for the fall?
In terms of the replacement?
Yeah.
The hope would be that if we go out to bid next summer, they can be replaced in the fall of 2026.
And then,
I'm sorry, 2026.
right.
Lost track.
And then the Trails Committee, this is an annual request that you see often. It's $11,000 to rehabilitate bomb bridges, signage, trail infrastructure. It's the things that are your normal wear and tear. This isn't the large scale project, but these are the normal wear and tear. This is what the Trails Committee thinks that they can manage, and $11,000 is their ask for that. And then lastly, we have our annual administrative expenses. This is reduced from last year. It's a $15,000 ask, which covers our advertisements in various newspapers that we had to do. Also our dues to the CPA fund for the state. And lastly, I'd be happy to see that we finished out 2 bond payments this year. That leaves us with 3 bond payments remaining, one in 27, 28, and one in 30. One for Fawn Lake, one for Bedford Village, and one for the Lilburn Field. And after those, we have nothing more that's bonded.
Do you want to ask a question?
You come back to me, please.
Bill?
I don't have anything.
Karen?
Yeah, so
they're such great projects, so it's been such a nice time, and they really nice. But then financially, pulling projects out of the usual budgeting process can be complicated. So that's where otherwise I love all this stuff. So just wondering, there's so many projects this year. Is there any thought to how they'll be managed and overseen and ensure that?
Yeah, so DPW and recreation are handling the open space and recreation categories. They're also handling the largest ones, really, the town common project, which is well underway. And we have a great management team on that, construction management team on that one. Fire station will, it's going to be chosen by the fire station captain.
In terms of the vendor that they
Yeah.
use. Yeah, so just to back up a little bit, in terms of the project review, the levels of review that these projects go through, while different than capital in the sense of they don't have as many months that they need to kind of go through because it's a smaller budget, it still goes through the same process in the sense of going through the town manager's office and being reviewed to make sure that it is even at a point of going to the community preservation group to be ready. We don't move forward projects that are incomplete, that haven't been vetted, that are not ready for town meeting. This year, the group did turn down a project that wasn't prepared for town meeting. We don't bring projects to town meeting that don't have a department that hosts it. And by department hosting it, I don't just mean a staff person, it's going to go to a third-party consultant, or it's going to be managed through the same bid and procurement process that any capital project would be. So I still just want it to be incredibly clear that the community preservation group is doing the same level of vetting that CalPEX does, even though the timeline is slightly different.
So Ashley Large is very comfortable with her archive record preservation process. She's been doing that for years. She would manage that one. The HVAC controls and the interior library painting, that project falls under the facilities department. That's their wheelhouse.
Everything's owned by.
It is.
Yes, we're legally not allowed to just give out CPA funding to any entity that is not managed through the town. We cannot just cut a check to someone that has an eligible project. It has to still be within the organization that
Perfect example of that is the pickleball court. They originally came with sort of grassroots suggestion of estimates of what could be done for the pickleball courts. We took that into advisement and said, okay, we think this is a much bigger opportunity. Let's see what the DPW has capacity for in what year, and then that helped us shape with them their request. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Thank you for all that you all do. The town would not be the town without your excellent work. I guess a tiny question and a recommendation. The question, the interpretive signage, is there any accommodation in that for visually impaired?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm not probably allowed to speak.
I didn't know you cared about such things.
I don't care about this at all. I just happen to know.
Lee is my hero, she can speak whenever she wants.
Thank you. Remember you said that. There's an organization in Boston called the Institute for Community Inclusion. They're the ADA compliance entity for the Northeast region. They have extensive materials and staff who are expert at all things access, all things covered by the ADA. And they have someone who has agreed to spend some time with us for free, which is pleasant, offering some advice about how signage can be as accessible as possible, given that there are some limitations that we won't probably be able to get beyond. You can't really put braille signage up in a building where you can't reach the braille kind of thing. But yeah, the idea will be to have experts helping us to do all of that for all of those projects, and we hope to help, if they're interested, the Historic District Commission. They're thinking about signage as well, to begin to make sure that the idea of access for signage gets to be generally an issue that people grapple with.
Yeah. Thank you. I can't bear to raise this as a concern, but just The funding for design work for the HVAC system, just encourage somebody at town meeting to be ready to describe that. Many were dismayed when the more ambitious design for a town common, somebody crept up against that. We weren't really ready with a full-throated response. People know that the design cost is going to be like 1/10 of the build cost, and they get their hackles up right off the bat. So I can't imagine it would come up, but I still encourage you to be ready to defend that design work.
I was making my slides for capital today, and I made a separate slide saying, why do we need money for design work? And so we're going to do the same thing for CPA, for Sean to kind of review. And so separate from the slides, it's just kind of for Terrence to go through for capital. There's going to be an extra slide for why we need to design something before we do construction and similar to this. So we'll do this.
Yeah, that's part of what was in my mind, was the much larger price tag for the boiler, design, boiler replacement design.
Yeah.
And people think like, why do you, so anyway, leave that where it is.
No, it's-
And just the observation, this is the wrong place, but it popped in my head, and I'm just going to share it. I love the museum angle to the new firehouse. Lexington's new firehouse has a wonderful bay for its old school fire vehicle. And I only wish that we had the floor plan or the room to take the fire wagon that we got down on the stage down there and put it as part of this museum. Is there any chance that could be
Yes,
possible?
it will be.
He's still here.
All you have to do is
I don't
ask.
know, right?
That was, and I will say that was one of the first things that was part of the design conversation with the design team, that actually was going to be featured.
Oh, you have my vote.
Yes.
Spread the word.
Yeah.
The other thing that's going on around the fire station is a consultation with Sharon McDonald, who's the town's historian, as well as members of the Bedford Historical Society office, which is at the basement of Old Town Hall. They have a lot of historic material for the fire station and its history as well. So some of those materials will be on long-term blend for part of the display that isn't being envisioned.
That's all.
Can you walk through the slides, but I don't have to remember all my questions. Actually, they're not questions so much as just concerns or comments.
Okay, so you're going with affordable housing.
So I love the life skills management program. I have since it first came out, but I'm always curious, how many people have you helped this year, last year?
Last year was 15 that were served, they have capacity for 35.
Is it going up, is it going down?
15 was more than it was the year before, I think it was 12 the year before that.
Okay.
So it is going up, they do have capacity. They did do 149 services in the second half of last year, so we are seeing some uptick there.
One thing that is also important to share is even the 15 families that we helped was at the time of the application being turned in, and even since the application was turned in January, 3 families graduated and 3 more families came online. So usually, the number is at 15, but that doesn't mean it's the same stagnant 15 families using the same services. So we have already kind of gotten feedback that even though 15 is kind of the number that they hang out at often, it's not just the same 15 people using the
That's
same
what I was
15
curious about.
services.
Success to me is how many
Yes,
people
absolutely,
graduate.
are coming in.
That was the intent, it was my.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really cool number, the number of people
Who are graduating, as they put it, yes, and then more people that are being recruited to come in.
So that was my nosiness about that. We can move on to the next one. Okay, this I love. I love the archive workers project that we have going on. Do you, by any chance, have any idea on what percentage she's finished? Is this a lifetime job for
I
her?
think it is a lifetime job. That would be my guess. I think there's more that, the trick is she may have a lot of old things. Are they all important? So she's sifting through what are the important things.
Happy to have her make all those decisions.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
She is the
Is
professional.
this thing, or is she making good progress?
She's definitely making good progress. I think that we could have the archivist give us a sense of, in the grand scheme of truly historical, if she wanted to give us kind of a cutoff of a certain time frame, she could certainly let us know what percentage of, from 1780 to 19, like what percentage of documents she's kind of gotten through if we want to give people a window. Because I do think, to Erin's point, the minute you hit 1970, she could say, all right, well, I'm always going to be generating documents. Like, once you hit the 25-year mark, she's going to be ready to, start
I don't
putting
know
them
that I would advocate having a window because
Yeah,
there will be someone who says, are you done yet?
yeah,
And I think this needs a little more runway.
yeah. Just internally, you're interested to know where she's kind
Yeah,
of
I'm just curious. I mean, I'm always looking for, do we give you enough money? Do we give you too little money? What was the money given to her?
For you all to know, this is always the appropriate amount for her on an annual basis. She always wants to be very sensitive to not asking for too much. And I think we've shared,
29
Yes.
cents, yeah.
See, I remember that.
on an annual basis, she always applies for a grant, and if she receives it, she turns back usually up to $15,000 in any given year. She just hasn't heard back from this particular grant. So $30,000 is kind of the sweet spot for Ashley's, digitization and archival work. And then some years she's been able to secure a grant and turn back money. But no, if we gave her $100,000, she wouldn't be able to spend it in 1 year as an example. It would be great to be able to,
She has a plan,
yeah,
and she's doing what I consider the Heidi model. Let me look for this to find money.
Absolutely.
It warms my heart when I hear people do that. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go on that slide. I have to ask this. I don't mean anything light, I'm just curious if the question has come up. Who is the driving force behind rebuilding the town common?
the town common rehabilitation came out of prepping areas around town, preparing for the 300. So it came out of the tricentennial discussions.
Okay. I don't have any follow-on. There was a question asked, and I said,
Yeah.
my answer is no, I have no idea.
Yeah, and part of the presentation, and this is just a data point because it came up when the design portion failed. If town meeting is not receptive to this, we will just park this, and if people are still interested in rehabbing the common, we will have to wait until after the 300 celebrations because we're not going to come back and have the common torn up for the 300. So we would either want to help people approve this now and get the work done for the 300, or we would just say, all right, we need to make the cutoff and hopefully we can make some of these ADA improvements post.
Sounds good.
We are going to make a strong argument at
Well, I was about to
Annual time.
hammer that. I was about to kick
Strong
that dead
argument.
horse some more. I've said it before in the past, Mark said it again already tonight. You have to come up with a bulletproof presentation, because I've seen some really interesting projects go down in flames at town meeting because they went with that strong word. So you need answers to questions nobody even asked. What are you going to do with the excess soil that you dig up? Is it approximate? I mean, it's just, you got to be ready for anything.
Let's open it.
So, okay, thank you, that's all I wanted on that.
Okay?
Okay, I got to admit total ignorance. I don't know who a Matty Lord is, I don't know why we care, I don't know what the artist was trying to get at by doing this, or was this a town-inspired idea? I just like a little more background on that.
So Matty Lord is a metal sculptor artist. She's local to Massachusetts. This sculpture is the first public gifted sculpture in the town of Bedford. And you're working on
I got nothing
And
against it,
this-
I just,
Yeah, no, it's,
Again, just because I think it's helpful to know who brings these forward, this was brought forward from the Cultural Commission, the Cultural District Commission. They were looking for areas in town where they could have small projects to make improvements, knowing that sometimes it's those small little areas where it's, a little library, a little art project, something on a narrow gauge trail that they could do a little
you
contribution.
got little boxes that are kind of-
Yep, so this was one of those where they thought to themselves, it could be an easy repaint, restructure, they could also do some ADA-related improvements, so they were working with our economic development director. So this came from one of their ideas brought forward. They also had a handful of other ideas that are still works in progress, but this was one that is very able to be managed by a staff point person and is very doable in the grand scheme of having it work with accessibility, recreation and open space, because we can, as a CPA group, can actually put money into garden spaces. And to Aaron's point, it's the first sculpture piece that was donated or erected in Bedford,
With
so.
signage is flashing as a possibility. I mean, I've seen lots of projects in town, I have history of projects going back to the Eagle Scout project, 20 years ago, kids. And one thing I always look for is who's going to love this, in terms of take care of it, make sure it stays in good repair.
So last year's, I mentioned that the administrative line item of 15,000 was reduced from last year's 25,000 because we did earmark for signage for our CDC funded projects around town. So this is one that would likely receive
Things that
signage.
can do cross projects.
And just to be clear, the town of Bedford already maintains this area. We do, our grounds division already maintains the grounds in this area.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next page, I know I have one more. Yeah. Could the Trails Committee possibly spend more money?
That's a common question. This is because all of their work is done internally by their own committee. 11,000 is a manageable amount for them. They get discounts on their lumber from Common Lumber, and they do a lot of the maintenance themselves, so they aren't spending that over, that way.
I use the fruits of their labor, and I like it.
Yeah, 11,000 is what we actually asked them to, the Trails Committee liaison asked me this year, she said, well, we were thinking of coming in every other year, but there are really some things, and I was like, it's $11,000, please, come.
Well, I want to add on to that. They do the beaver receivers,
That's managed through DPW stuff.
DPW.
Yeah.
I didn't know if we had enough of those. I met one of the beavers the other day. They're very charming guys.
We have a lot of them.
He just about took a treat, well, he's causing some problems. in this
Oh, yes.
neighborhood. But
Yes.
the beaver receivers,
Unfortunately, we cannot fund beaver deceivers with, I don't know if everyone's.
I don't know what a beaver deceiver is, but-
Beavers are a very big issue with waters, rising waters, but we can fund beaver deceivers, which help remove beavers from waterways when they're making dams. Well,
So you have a dam, and the dam floods everything, and there's actually one person in town, who has septic tank problems now because the floodplain, the water level has gone so high. A beaver deceiver is something that, it's like two cages separated by a pipe made in cages. So the beavers build the dam away from where the dam sits physically, so the dam can, so the water can flow through.
that's so cool.
It's called a beaver deceiver because I think it's a dam, but it's not really. It's a great thing.
It's free labor.
It's a great thing.
We can call it a darn.
That's funny.
I think that was all I had. Yeah, I mean, that's nice that the bond payments are going away. I feel old because I remember when we took out those bonds, but that's a different issue altogether. Yeah. Any questions?
Not really, I just have, well, one curiosity. The Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, you mentioned it's for 2 homes, is that supplemented with additional funds?
It would be yes, there is a balance in the Municipal Housing Trust now.
Okay, I see, this is the one that.
Yes. So with this, I think, with this, just about 1.5?
Just over, yeah.
Yeah, 1.5 million. That way it leaves a healthy balance in there. Unfortunately, as everyone knows, property prices in Bedford to purchase outright could use up that whole bucket really, really quickly. So being able to buy down some properties to be in the more affordable category helps them have enough funding to do that.
then the other question, it's good that the debt's going down. But what determines whether or not to carry additional debt? What projects have to be done? Is it like a threshold? Is it-
So I haven't seen any bonding in my tenure here. What,
Yeah.
is there a threshold?
We haven't had projects in the past handful of years that the finance director, myself have determined, because the balance was so large in the undesignated fund balance. The finance committee, regularly so for the past 5 or so years, has really launched that balance and said you needed to have more applications kind of come in, and we really took that to heart. There was truly no reason to take on a project and bond it when we had a high undesignated fund balance, and our projects were at appropriate amounts. You know, if we had a lower balance and we wanted to go and bond something like the town common rehabilitation project, certain aspects of that, that would be appropriate. I think moving forward, if we were to look at bonding the large improvements at Springsburg Park in a future year, if they really come out with a consultant team over the $1 million mark, that would be appropriate. If Old Town Hall and the HVAC replacement comes out to be priced over $1 million, that would certainly be appropriate. So if we're looking at our debt falling off in the next couple of years, certainly taking on one new debt payment in one of those projects meets that criteria, but the CPA group as a whole does not have a hard and fast rule that absolutely over this threshold we're bonding, because we wanted that flexibility and we wanted to take the feedback of the finance committee and have it be more of a conversation, given how much extra revenue we were kind of needing to spend.
All right, thank you.
First I'd like to continue on Tom's question about the 100K municipal for you mentioned about waiting for the Carlisle project. I didn't catch that.
So the Carlisle Road project, the Develos project, if that comes to fruition, the Municipal Housing Trust's first choice would be to buy down a couple properties in that development.
So in general, like all this number, I initially was proposed by different owner, like whoever will work on the project.
Exactly, different organizations or
But this number that haven't gone through the competitive bidding, but this is just initial budget, then we gone through the competitive
Right,
bidding.
these have not gone through a bidding process.
Right.
some are just general quotes that we've gotten from landscape architects or our own HVAC controls, or compared to, actually the painting one I know was a painter that we use pretty regularly and trust, and we said, you know, what do you think this would cost, because we need to ballpark something here, but we would be going for it.
But this number is more aim for the, like, the upper limit, is that right?
Yes, if we went out to bid and the bids were higher than the amount appropriated, then that would make us have to come back to the drawing board.
Right. Okay. So likely at the end of the year, the actual usage might should be lower than so.
That would be the hope.
And similar to how with capital projects, we close out anything that, you know, if a project comes in and our bids come over budget, the first feedback to staff is you need to adjust the scope. So if we get bids back for the town common and they all come in at $900,000 and we have $830,000 approved by town meeting, we're adjusting the scope down. I'm not going to bring everyone back to town meeting to talk about $70,000. So it's either DPW might find a few extra dollars in their budget, or we're going to reduce the scope slightly in a way that isn't going to deeply offend or change the, the original intent. Whereas if we have something way off base, it is staff really need to kind of look at, you know, did the landscape of something totally change? But that was more what happened during COVID, you know, like construction costs changed.
The library, library HVAC is a great example of that.
Okay, that's my only question.
Thank you. George?
Robert?
A couple of questions. So I'm looking at the 6-year plan spreadsheet. Is very last row, estimated available revenue and estimated expenditure. Am I correct that the red
Yeah.
indicate that by next year our expenditure will exceed our revenue?
I'm happy to touch upon that. So the way that the 6-year plan projects out, we always have placeholders for 10% requirements for affordable housing, historic preservation, and open space. So if you look at the lines that are slightly above that, let's say 112,000, 244,000, 244,000, there are a few placeholders that add up to about $600,000 that are, where are you looking?
This is the spreadsheet, right? Not the presentation.
red?
Just go all the way to the very bottom of that spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So if you go into the budget backup instead of the PowerPoint.
Okay, gotcha. I thought it was on.
Yep, so on the bottom of this spreadsheet, there's some red.
Got it.
And so on the bottom of the spreadsheet, I'm carrying over $600,000 in placeholders that would be required of us to spend if I had 0 projects that had to do with affordable housing, recreation, or open space. But in FY '28, in this column, I already have all of those placeholders.
Yeah, so that was my second question, because then I'm looking at the 2027 expenditure for affordable housing, open space, and community preservation. Am I correct? Am I not reading this right? That the affordable housing is appropriation $744,000 on that alone? That's not including historical appropriation, more of the community one? So doesn't that exceed your current annual 10%?
So you absolutely can exceed your 10%.
Sure.
It's just that you have to meet that threshold. So in FY '28, all of the placeholders for projects that are in that top section, those are all a moving target, right? So we still carry what people have requested of us in future years. So as of now, in this last cycle, yes, in theory, we have $4.7 million of projects. There's no way on earth I'm bringing you $4.7 million of projects next year. We're going to move those out. We're going to move probably the Springswood Park development out, or we're going to have a different sense of what the HVAC number looks like for Old Town Hall. We haven't even started having group meetings as a public over the future of 55 to Great Road. So all of FY '28 is going to be reduced, but we want to make sure that all of our applicants understand that we're still keeping those placeholders, similar to the capital plan that used to have $20 million bottom lines, but they're over time getting reduced. And the 10% affordable housing placeholders on the bottom are going to remain there because I want the committee to remember that, let's say everyone pulled out all of their applications, we would still be required to move those $112,000, $244,000 appropriations to historic funds.
So I guess, is there any, I understand what you're saying on those percentages, but if this 6-year plan isn't going to be truly reflected because we're going to move some stuff out, say next year, are there expenditures this year that relate to, for example, design consultation that you're doing this year because you're anticipating it's been the actual execution next year, but then if you're not going to do those execution this year because it exceeds your budget, you're going to move those out. Should those consultations be bumped out too? Because, for example, if you bump execution out 2 years, that consultation 2 years from now might not be relevant.
That's exactly my question. So is there a shelf life, for example, on the design of the HVAC system in Old Town Hall?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. So the reference to HVAC, for instance, our hope is the 1.3 is reduced. It's not going to be moved. And there's certainly a shelf life. If the HVAC consultant comes back and says miraculously, this doesn't need to be replaced, we would have them study it, but not design it. And then we would be not spending the $136,500. They would be giving us feedback on the status of the HVAC, and we wouldn't even be having them spend the full $136,000.
That's exactly what happened with the high school. You remember? High school boilers.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. So there's no expenditure this year that will have impact the following year until next year.
Correct.
Um, Just like some of the other policies, is there a policy for community preservation for example, if we just spend however we want, or is there a percentage that say, oh, if we get any revenue of $4 million, that we want to spend a certain percentage to ensure the local communities carry over?
The committee itself doesn't have a policy in terms of what they want in their undesignated fund balance. I imagine that in the next year or two, they probably will want to, because they have a handful of projects that are coming down the road that are going to be larger. That's something that their select board liaison has brought up, because there are a few bigger ones that are going to need to be competing with one another. In a lot of communities, the previous community I worked in, we had a similar policy. So that is an item that was going to be recommended in a future year, that they're going to decide what they want to keep, not in their reserves, but in their undesignated fund balance.
Yeah, the comment.
There's too much stuff that's getting locked up in committee.
Correct, yes.
I'm guessing the fund balance is sold up, and you can't do a project with more than that.
Right. So I would say we're not there yet, but it's certainly something that the group is going to need to decide before we get to 55 the Great Road, the future use of Springsburg Park, which, you know, a $20 million pool is like, well, we could use all CPA, but we're obviously not doing that keepy-doodly thing.
We've been really fortunate because during the COVID years, there was not a lot of projects that were coming forward, not a lot that were being acted on. So we're seeing a much greater volume now that we don't have to say no to just yet. But I agree with Amy, that we'll have to start making some decisions down the road.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that you have a spot, but then also you have to your point, a peak, right? But then you spend so much, kind of like the rest of the budget, and then you end up having to drop sharply, which you're trying to control, versus saying, you know, hey, we can have some sort of policy that controls us to be able to keep like a more sustainable, you know, year-over-year sort of expenditure, things that we want, versus the kind of immediate gold rush of, oh, spend everything.
Yeah. One more thing I will add to that is, since we have a handful of applications that are recurring because they're based off of the needs of some of our department sites, the rec department being able to kind of rehabilitate athletic fields in a certain way, or, you know, fencing, or DPW being able to maintain certain things, those departments also know that they need to pull back for a handful of years if they have another project coming up that they want to execute that's larger. So I think it's also too important to consider, for instance, Josh Smith and the rec department knew that they needed to pull back the last couple of years because they wanted to put forward a very specific Springsburg Park plan that was different than their standard fields rehabilitation. So they took a few years off working on some baseball fields and just kind of wanted to do some fencing, knowing that Springsburg Park was coming forward. So there is that respectful give and take with departments that had some standard applications that were kind of just year-over-year work. But they certainly would, I think that obviously policies and recommendations to say, don't even bother turning in an annual application if we kind of give them some guidance, they would obviously be receptive to that too.
Last question. For those who trust me, I appreciate the pictures that you're going to show the kind of rehabilitation. What's the lifespan of a brand new bog bridge with plastic?
I think Kirsten emailed me that the other day. Let me get back to you.
Alan, do you have any questions?
Thank you, first of all. All my questions, I think, were circling around fiscal year 28, the expenditures there, but I think that kind of pushed out all my concerns, so thank you.
I guess it's 8.
So let's see expenses
in another budget.
Well, does the trails committee have like an account? Like, we have a fiscal year, they don't spend it all, they can carry it over to the fiscal year. Or is it-
All CPA accounts can be carried over for future years.
They all have their own account, or is it one big?
Every annual appropriation for community preservation funding is its own line. And I can follow up with you, I don't want to, I would imagine 8 to 10 years per bog bridge, depending on the material, but I don't want to make a quick number, so I can follow up with you. Maybe depending on the location.
Right, I'll give it.
But let's not get bogged down.
I was waiting. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the non-trivial number of fans. Yeah, I think that might be a good idea. So the next thing I have on the agenda is budget. And we're down to, there are a number of ways that we can do this. We can do it what I'll label the insane way by going to every single line item and vote on it. Yeah, or we can do what we've done in the past, go out and start at the top. So we can get a vote and go through the biggest possible budget, which is one vote, the whole thing. If that doesn't work, then chop it down.
Yeah, just a hybrid.
What's that?
Answer just a hybrid. Read down the list of budgets, allow anybody to pull the one that should be pulled out.
Well, even that gets interesting, but I'll try and take the comment at face value in this case, there are 8 budget. Okay. Town operating budget, town discretionary budget, planning, school, board of health, library, and ambulance. And we can do it in which way on that.
I moved to vote on all of them. I didn't hear any of them.
For that, I mean, really hope like the F-127 model very much more, more filled out. I feel like it's having the updated. I hope like actually we see the actual final balance. I think there's still a lot of that having been updated.
I thought that the town manager had one update on that.
Like it's still not updated on the tech.
For the model.
Yeah, I'm not thinking, I thought it was just recently. The scorecard was created.
I know he said he was updating the model. I didn't look at when the last tab was updated.
This was very bad.
It's better.
What are you looking for?
So, okay, a few things about just a look at the federal step, right? You're gonna, I mean, I hope all the capital project, all this gonna reflect it. Like right now, you can look at the non-recurring expenditure, this one hasn't been filled. Right?
What were those new ones?
Road 27, 26, 7, 8, none. And I think I'll ask for the other tab, single family tax bill, like for the 26 line. I think Madam mentioned, but he will ask them to do it, but guarantee.
There, updated scorecard, I thought it was a scorecard.
It's a call out and also need update.
That's actually really useful.
So the non-recurring expenditures, I don't think, do we have any non-recurring expenditures?
Well, the capital project, I think should be go on.
Well, the thing I want to be careful.
But those are outside of the budget, because those are for either using free cash or.
That's right, yeah, I know that's not part of operating budget, but I mean, like, that will reflect it actually, eventually will reflect that actually how much money that's right?
So,
I
I
was
want
pulled out.
Those are separate budgets.
I want to be really careful here that we can get into analysis paralysis and keep a hold of it under China. If we want to make changes here, that means it's fine, but we want other departments, so you got to make sure it's a question of the law waiting on a week or two on the budget. It's just an informational question, it's a different thing altogether. I'm not trying to tell you what to do or how to think, it's just actions have consequences and we need to be careful with it. We need to produce a budget for the town and the town will drive it.
The only thing that changed from the that some CapEx to be bonded, right?
CapEx can be bonded, so now it's actually done so we use less free cash.
Right. I don't know if CapEx has changed.
And what changed? No. None of those changed.
Right, so that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. So
We can chase these numbers, and I'm not trying to say don't, I'm just trying to say, let's do a good job with this. Which actually works a different way. If somebody makes a motion, you're going to have to follow the motion and see what it does.
So I do have one question. So, when we use the revenue excluding the use of free cash is $139,000. So if everything goes perfectly, if the revenue we expect, we get spend what we intend to spend, we're going to have a balance of $150,000.
Right. No, we'd have a balance of 1.7. Because that's just saying, Matt talked about this last week, remember, that's the difference there, the 1.5 is for the roads.
Yeah.
For 1.6 is for the roads, and so he's just highlighting that since that's really kind of technically a recurring expense, that if next year we had no free cash for the roads, you immediately lose that 1.6 because you still have to spend it on the roads. Right?
All right, so.
You also need to be careful about what our expenditures are deliberately conservative. So the number you see,
So what I'm getting at is, say you spend $1.7 million so you only use 11 deficit. So what levers do we have? What other expenses do we have? Free cash.
we have a reserve fund, shared stabilization fund.
How much stabilization is what?
I think it's higher than that, but it's about 7. I think it's closer to 8. It's way over 6%.
So what could we use that for? Just overage, basically our discretion.
It's at the discretion of town meeting and the select board. We can make recommendations, but we only control the reserve fund, we don't control stabilization.
And the reserve fund is $750.
But if we wanted to make a recommendation to reduce the tax burden, that would be an option.
Benefit, we have to look in the schools.
750 in the reserve fund, the schools want 300 of free cash to go into the stabilization fund. That's on the free cash sheet.
So there's no request for like 750.
It's 750 because that's about the number we've seen in the past.
Yeah, right now there's no request.
There are no, I'm unaware of any requests other than the one that we granted the other day, that was the facilities.
For the schools.
For the elevator.
That was 26.
So that's it. So, yeah, that's the only request I know of. And that was unusual, we don't usually get them until the end of the year because people spend down their budgets for it and then try and.
So we usually have somebody request something.
That's why it's 750.
Yeah.
Zero.
The counterpoint is when you appropriate a fraction of that, go back to that. Or you feel, hold on to something for a year.
Personal opinion, and that's all it is, I would build the budget and try to, different pieces all sort of support each other. And 750, I hate to sound ridiculous, but 750 isn't that much money. I mean, you're asking me, not going to change taxes by law. Because you can plug it into the law and see what it does.
But now the school has their own reserve. So they can reach that.
That's the intent, they're supposed to pull 450.
So,
I think they were talking about 450 for next year. So they're gonna put 300 in, and 450 down, if they have 600 now, or 300 now.
Yeah, 650 right now.
650, yeah.
And they're actively trying to make those the last hours if they pull and hoping.
Oh, no, I understand, but that's what's going on. Yeah. I'm not putting spins on it. I'm just trying to just a fact, man.
Magna. That's from my house.
Didn't know you'd be getting trivia with that. First service organization.
I guess, when I look at the model, is it updated in that 8.1 levy and 2.7% budget still realistic? Or is that?
I think, personally, I think
That's not.
I think it's gonna change every time we touch the model. How much the change is gonna be a question. Is it a meaningful change or is it a small change?
Well, I mean, it's going to be, and like, the way I was looking at this, when you look, we're actually in a really good place this year. Because we're coming in at growth on recurring expenditures of 3.66%, which when you figure compared to our growth of 2.5% plus new growth, which runs about, which is about 1.8%, right? Our tax levy limit opportunity is going up by 4.3%. So it's one of the first times since I've been on the committee that our growth in recurring expenditures is significantly less than our levy limit growth.
What are you looking at? Is your model?
No, like line 52 or 54 shows you, well, excuse me, it shows you 51, 52, 54 shows you the previous levy limit and kind of the growth, right? So we're growing this year by 4.31% is the levy limit growth. Because you're having a 2.5% limit growth, and then new growth is about the assessor's assuming 1.6 million for new growth, right? Which is about 1.6%-ish.
Went down in the previous.
It did, but I'm saying $1,000, right? So like, and that's kind of their current estimate, so versus, so like to me, what I'm looking at though is more, it went up by like when you add those two together, 4.3%, and we're growing the base by 3.66%. So we actually, if it weren't for local receipts going down, which I'm just curious, I sent a note to Matt
You
about
want the
that.
mouse to scroll where you're talking about, that's what you're
Do
talking
you know why in local receipts, they're projecting it's going down significantly because of water and sewer user charges? Do you have a sense of why that is? I'm putting you on the spot because you're here, but if you don't, I sent Matt a note as well.
No, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I thought this year the water sewer went down, another sewer that I saw. And the fire I went down a little bit. Right?
Well, the usage did,
Oh, the charter was.
but they go together. So like, that's why I was kind of like, I would have expected if the user charges were going down,
Right.
one would expect the cost to go down commensurately, so,
Right.
like, and maybe they did, and maybe it just didn't account for it in terms of our budget for, the select board, so,
Okay, so like, ask a good question, like, try to get a sense about, all the changes this year's budget, what actually eventually leaded to the real tax rate increase, that's what try to get it to. Right now, it looks like the budget increase for FY27 seems like, according to the number right now, 2.7, kind of close to or target of 2.5. But actually, I'm trying to get a good understanding what kind of tax increase will trigger for next year. That's in total 8.1, right? That's in total plus new, all the different tax. But also, how much will translate to actually, for example, the residential tax increase?
So the average single, there's a sheet for the average single family tax
So
bill.
that's why I asked for the 2026 number.
Right,
Should have.
we asked for that last week.
Right.
But we still don't have it there.
but I think that's going to be something that's, right?
Well, okay.
You're going to have to look at quite a few calculations to
I
get that.
understand, but that's the other thing I'm saying, like, even though we say, we are claiming that we are very conservative on the budget, but why we still seeing so much, like residential tax rate, why increase so much?
Because the valuations go up and the tax rates go up.
What?
Going down.
The valuations of the homes go up in addition to the tax rate go up.
Okay, but why we need to raise so much tax? That's what I'm saying.
I think, well, the thing is, I think we're conservative this year compared to prior year.
I
So
know.
we're trying to taper down.
Okay, so are we actually tapering down? Or like tapering down? Like, what we doing here? Why sitting here? If we just look at this number, say, okay, yes, every project is wonderful. So what we doing? Actually, what kind of actually authority we have, all of it, what we trying to do? What trying to enforce?
I don't think you're gonna get the 4 digits of accuracy on any of these.
Oh, no, I'm not asking what is the accuracy. Like,
I think you're trying to squeeze it harder than it's meant to be squeezed.
actually, that's what we do here, we try to raise we did. I feel like we're not actually on the other side, I feel, not squeezing enough. Right. I don't know what it is, but I feel a sense, like, basically, a couple of things, I do feel like. All the project individual level, I understand the good intention, I want to do. But as a town itself, if we do like try to be disciplined, really try to control the spending, but we do have to look hard into every individual project and look away how can we get the cost down. Right.
But, I mean, I hear that it's conflicted, right? One of the reasons why we set the guideline much lower than that last year, so the budget, so the time's going to work for it, which they have done a really
They've
good
done,
job.
but they're admirable.
But then what becomes challenging to Vincent's point is that everything is a jewel in town. Everything's worth like, a lot of money and spending on it. And that becomes like a challenge, right? Of managing budget. It's like, every time it's not part of the nice new toy, kind of quit.
But I don't think any of us are qualified to make those decisions. That's why we set guidelines and let
There's
the people,
also
the
a budget,
professionals.
and the budget's a voted item of town meeting, the legal documents are voted items. We cannot exceed the budget.
So, I mean, when you look at it,
It's not a free-for-all. It's not just, we need a new toy, let's go buy a new fire truck. The money's not in the budget for it.
No, I know, but like all these things have been discussed in the last couple of weeks. The department's bring forward, these are the things they do well. I'm not saying that it's not worthwhile.
I'm just saying, be careful, because this is something where we push over here, something's gonna happen over there if we're not real careful.
So, understood.
I think, go ahead.
So I guess like I'm trying to get it to is, I know like everybody has the best intention, control the cost, all the project intention itself, right? Are we still seeing the spending increase part of it over years, right? And just look away, how can we actually keep the cost down, right?
And our number one tool is the guideline, that all the departments were given a challenge to meet 2.5%, almost all of them did. That's the tool to.
Yeah, I guess I want to ask a little more. And just consider like, data control the tax increase on the residents, right?
And that's a complicated.
I know it's complicated,
It's
not
complicated
simple.
by the fact, commercial values you have.
That's a lot, I understand a lot of reasons. But I mean, even though we're data, I think we as a town, we should look for more efficiency. That's what we're trying to get.
I think we're late in the process to be ripping it all up, but if somebody wants to make a motion to go rip it all up, we can do that. No, I'm serious.
That's certainly not my intention, but I feel like should have put a more like a force function actually, like encourage more like take a more like I would say hard work or like hard decision to further the efficiency.
Well, so, I kind of dispute that. I think every department did their best. Do you think the school is standardized?
Absolutely.
Do you think Board of Health is standardized? I mean, where do you think this came from? Because even the town came in under 2.5% under their guidelines. So I honestly believe they've all done the best they can to squeeze as high as they can, given the fact that nobody has crystal ball, nobody knows what they're having. So we put guidelines up. we will not spend more than this. What's the
So-
list? This is the budget that we set.
Okay, so you very much believe that even though like spending that much, that's already under the condition that everybody has done the best job in the individual cost.
Yes, we run the process to the best of our ability. I believe.
So,
can't
I mean,
tell
you saw the presentations, where do you disagree with the one?
So that one of the challenges from, and it is from my point of view, is that that's exactly, from my point of view, I don't have certain expertise or even detailed knowledge about how each project are executed, right? And all each department exactly works.
That's why we have the department heads do those budgets, because they're the experts. I don't want to tell the school what to do, because I'm not qualified. I don't want to tell planning what to do, I'm not qualified.
I appreciate what you're getting at, though. We can make a recommendation about what the town can afford from a holistic perspective, like the total number, like debt-wise and stuff like that, but we can't. We can't have any value when, it's line item by line item. So we just don't have the information, the expertise, or anything to add any value to that.
And then not
So,
what
but I do
determine
think,
the guidelines are.
what we do want to pay attention to are our expenses consistent with the town's historical growth and what may or may not be coming down the pike in terms of, contractions and other things like that. So we don't know. So it is best to, I guess, make that information available to people that we're looking at tighter budgets. So I hear what you're saying.
And I think that's what we're doing, to be honest with you. And I think that, squeezing and eliminating this and eliminating that, I think that's rather presumptuous that the town, to think that the town wants us to do that.
Yeah, I don't think we're in a position to do that. We don't know.
I think so,
We don't know.
I would recommend going on budget by budget. If there's something that you don't disagree with, this is where you both come, right? This is where the finance committee, you don't make the decision, but the town will look to the finance committee for the recommendation, whether it's approval or not approval. And that's it, and they made the decision that they're.
Our recommendations are holding the reins loosely.
Exactly.
We can't hold them tight. That's why expenditures are much less than this.
We can say we don't recommend it in the council vote for it. That's just how it is. But some people do respect the finance committee, respect it because we are looking at the numbers, and they might take that into consideration. So I think that's kind of our role. It's nice to
Yeah.
just explanation, I guess.
Yeah, don't take my message wrong. First of all, it's just like you kind of mentioned, like for example, this presentation, right? It's very good for me to learn about the wonderful project, but what value can add to as part of feedback? From my point of view, very little. I want to ask for some clarification questions.
That's even more true when you realize that we have absolutely nothing to say about expenditures.
Okay, so why we have this limit?
Let me finish, please. CPC runs by state law on its own. We have nothing to say about those expenditures, we have nothing to say about their income,
Okay.
nothing to say about what we're
That's good to
spending.
know, yeah.
So they come in here, they talk to us, it's great that they talk to us, it's very nice to know this stuff, but it doesn't matter what we think.
Oh, yeah, so that's for your information, basically.
Now, luckily,
CPC is its own beast.
so, but I'm still not quite done. Luckily, as you were asking for, they're being very good by asking us what we think. They're looking to us for guidance, we give them guidance. We have problems today with stuff. We would have said so, we've said it in the past, we have too much in your designated fund balance, we have too little in your housing balance.
CapEx looks to us for guidance, and they responded strongly last
So,
year.
we're doing the best we can, but the thing I have to be mindful of, and the rest of you are saddled with this burden as well, is we have to make progress. We have to make a budget. We can't say, hey, I'm sorry, we didn't get to it.
I'm not just like, with that certain overwhelming. Basically, I guess the best approach, like how, at least from my point of view, I feel like how can I add value to this process?
So my
Right.
suggestion is state your concern, make a motion or whatever of your concern, and then move on.
I would also note that the 8.1% is what it would be if we used the entire levy, which we're not. We're using 1.7 billion less than that. So that 8.1% growth is overstated based on the way the model's designed.
Well, also the growth in the levy, that's all like statutorily formulated. That's-
Yeah, exactly. So
It
we're
is
not,
what it
like,
is. We can't affect-
you can take on the top where it's saying there's an
We can't-
8.1%
Right, we
growth.
can cut the budget
and-
to zero and it wouldn't change that. That is what it is.
Yeah.
We overstate expenditure. We understate.
You know what I'm saying for the model?
No, I agree with that. The model is reflecting the reality that we're understating.
But we're not, we're never going, our budget is not going to be resulting in 101 million
I agree.
taxes levied. That's what we could do, but it's not, because we still have 1.8 million left in that use tax levy. So you have to remove 1.8
You
million.
might want to think about the relevance of that 8.1.
Yeah, because it's just relevant. It's just relevant.
But it's just a formula.
It's just a formula. That's not going to be our tax bill.
Oh, yeah,
So maybe we just don't, maybe that's just not a relevant.
But in the year, like you don't have any use of all the tax levies, then it only, it is the number.
If we used all of that,
Right.
which we're not doing, right? That's kind of the whole point, is we want to maintain
some
unused
unused
tax
levies.
levy. And that was my point, is the fact that we are, our growth for recurring expenditures is 0.5% less than our tax levy is growing this year. To me, it's quite
Less than,
comforting,
yeah.
because the past few years, we've been growing significantly faster than the 2.5 plus new growth. And that's the point where you get to override territory, because you now have lost that. Put aside how much the town can afford to spend or not. If you hit the statutory limit, now you have to do an override, and you're in a different situation. We've lost the freedom to operate as a town. So I think that's what I like about where we are.
We burned through over $9 million in a very short number of years because we could. No other way around it. No, that's what it's because we could. We spent that money. Now we're coming into a former finance director said, a legion of those towns that are governed by 2.5. They have no choices. They have no decisions to make. 2.5 is the answer, unless they can get an override. Arlington's about to put up for another override, and one of the town committee people I talked to there said, I'm not sure I'm voting for it this time.
Well, and I think to my point though, is I think we've done a really good job year over year of getting it under control to where you could actually see a level where we don't need an override, because we've actually maybe have come in for a soft landing.
I agree. But to me, part of that is something that I've noticed since day one, is we understate this, we overstate that, so we always have a cushion.
Yeah.
Always have a cushion, because there's 3 states of the budget. One you'll never hit, one's illegal, and that leaves you one.
Where's the list of the budgets that you rattled down with the numbers?
I think it's line 6.
I use the,
So what's our levy?
Usually
Take out that
the
one.
scorecard.
I use
The scorecard?
Yeah, for
Okay.
the scorecard, yeah.
We're not doing that one.
I just scorecard. The ones in yellow are the ones I thought.
Excel sheet one,
I think the Excel sheet is read only, so I can't.
so that's what I'm looking at the formulas and just kind of doing it.
So would you entertain the motion then that we approve the ambulance budget of 1.665864?
It'd be about 100 million this year, so it's about.
All right, we've got a motion and a second.
Guys, there's a
folks.
motion and a second. A motion was made by Mark, seconded by Tom to approve the end of.
Oh, I was trying to.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
This
Yeah,
is
that's
not
not-
accurate though.
Oh, it's not.
Because this still has 3.35 for the schools, and the schools are 3.08.
Oh,
So this
okay.
is old.
Those are today's numbers now.
Thank you. So the motion is for the ambulance budget of 1.665864, seconded by Tom. Any discussion needed about approving the ambulance budget?
Where's the scorecard? I don't know, it's the bonus one.
It looks like this, it's in the folder.
Is it in the folder?
Yeah.
Fiscal 27 on scorecard.
Is that up to date?
Yes, it's the same as last meeting.
Do you want maybe, would you
Yeah.
mind helping us, Amy? I know I'm supposed to be
Yeah,
driving
no,
it, but I'm trying to drive this meeting.
Yes, but just to reiterate, the scorecard, bottom line, operating budgets have not changed, even though the model, I will absolutely reiterate to Matt, I understand that there's still some stuff missing in the model that you want. This is where we started, down here, and in the budget, right? Okay.
we can, well, start from the top. All of us in
You
favor?
want to start with schools? Sure.
Well, no, hang on, there's a motion on the floor, we can kill the motion and we vote on the motion. I recommend going ahead with the motion because it's the ambulance and it's sort of standing.
Because the ambulance is essentially an enterprise
It
fund.
is an
So,
enterprise
yeah,
fund.
yeah.
And
So,
23% increases because some of the cost of fire insurance.
They still pay their own, it's an enterprise fund, they pay their
No,
own.
I'm just saying, we have to check if we move some stuff.
Yeah, we move some stuff.
Hopefully they'll make up for it with the new services.
we'll just charge more.
So, the motion made, seconded. Alan?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Karen?
yes,
Mark?
Yes.
Ben, yes. Tom?
Yes.
Vincent? Yes. George? Yes. That passes. Approve the unit, recommend approval of the unit budget.
1.665,864.
Now, to George's point, we can start from the top, we can start anywhere. You can vote all of them if you want.
just to be productive, I'll do the library.
Second. Got
Okay, motion made by Karen,
1.71975.
library budget,
Exactly.
second by Mark. Let me cut to the chase on this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Recommendations for approval of the library budget.
At 171979.
And Ben, I agree with you, the Board of Health budget is a perfect example of an organization that has clearly responded to our call. I move that we recommend approval of the Board of Health budget of 548,412.
So motion made by Mark, second by Karen to approve the Board of Health budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recommend approval of the Board of Health budget.
I think planning is another piece of low-hanging fruit. I move that we recommend approval of the planning budget for fiscal year 27 and $287,875.
Motion made by Mark, second by Karen for approval of the planning budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, abstained, recommendation for the planning budget is approved. Who's next?
Town operating budget, if we want to get into
You guys do them all.
some meat, they have, again, absolutely responded to the call coming in at a 2.03% increase versus our guidelines of 2.5%. I move that we recommend approval of the town operating budget at $25,828,734.
Karen, you want to?
Second.
Motion by Mark, second by Karen to approve the town operating budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's different than what's in the model. The model's showing 25,796.
The score sheet, I work this with the assistant town manager today. The score sheet should be accurate.
The score sheet is correct, so seeing as how the model, so we could go,
So we could go.
and look at what,
But when we looked at this, we can go.
this
from
was what was presented to you last week. This does not change from last week.
Okay.
This is the model.
734.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was reading earlier, so.
Okay.
So, motion was made, motion seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recommend approval.
That was the town operating budget.
Schools.
I am blown away by how disciplined and thorough the exercise with the schools was and how much they were able to find without impacting what represents the fundamental value of this town.
Because this is
I move that we recommend approval of the school budget at $53,836,000.
No, this is wrong.
This is wrong. This is wrong. The schools improved by 3.08%. This is what I'm saying, this is wrong.
Do they have their final number? Or do we just need to put this out to next week?
I'm pretty sure it's what's in the model, which is 53,697,409.
Which one we have?
Row 21.
No, I mean, the scorecard that Matt said he put in for this one should have matched
but I understand what you're saying, it was the 3.03.
3.08.
Does this include the,
So this, the 25,825,734 is what you just voted for the town operating, correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
2872?
The spreadsheet is correct.
And,
The spreadsheet is.
yeah, so the schools,
Because the spreadsheet also has a higher non-discretionary amount than this. So I don't know if the two add
but
up.
the schools at the 3.35.
The school in the spreadsheet is a 3.08.
So then I would say if you want to hold off on the schools till next time.
Well, I
that's-
mean, we can look at what Cliff submitted, right? Which
No.
was,
We could always vote the lower amount, and if we find it needs an adjustment, we can adjust it.
because Cliff submitted it, let's see, here.
53,697.
On the 29.
I'll go with that number.
I don't remember when they came in on January 29th.
Yeah,
What's the number of the schools estimated weighing in January?
that's what I'm going to right now.
53,697,4, 3.08%.
So what's the difference?
chance
Is
of being
it
right.
possible that could include the reserve fund transfer? I'm just curious if we,
Only what, 150,000?
So there's a couple ways out of it. We vote the lower number and hope we're right, or we just put it off. The downside of putting it off, because everything has an upside and a downside. Our next meeting is March 5th.
Well, I think we can.
It's 100% right. I'm not
Cliff Smith.
concerned about that.
What did you say, Alan?
3.08 is 100% right.
Yeah.
I've been looking at the same thing.
I think we,
so we vote on the 53,697,409, and if we need to.
Yes.
All right, thank you all for your
And the previous
rigor in
votes you
getting this
took.
right.
were fine. The other bottom lines match. I understand what you were saying about the previous model for the town manager's budget, but the town manager's budget you did vote was what we presented last week. That has not changed.
Okay, so with
So
gratitude.
if you want to do the
um,
lower school budget,
yeah.
that works as well.
With gratitude to my colleagues for their rigor, I would amend my motion that we recommend approval of the fiscal year 27 operating budget for the schools of $53,697,409.
Second.
Motion made by Mark, seconded by Karen, school budget, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recommended if we push them out, check into that, what's going on.
I just checked Cliff's memo that he sent to us on January 27th following the school committee's meeting, and that the number Mark said is correct.
Yeah, it's right here.
I'm relatively confident of it, but we can bet, well, tomorrow's Friday, so
Oh, yeah, well, we can,
Do we need to vote on the non-discretionary?
Absolutely.
Sounds like a motion.
different number from the spreadsheet.
what are we
So
discussing
we've
now?
got the non-discretionary of 45,442, 593, do we know?
the
That
reason
would be correct.
that the two do not match is because the audit was not in the model. And we just want to make sure the audit is in here. And if you remember, oh, the audit is
Maybe
right
not.
here.
Yep.
During Matt's presentation,
Oh, he
you
moved it
recall
from one to
he
the
double
other.
counted it. It was in the finance department's
That's right.
operating budget, which is why that doesn't match. So we, sorry, I just blanked out. So we do want to have that be removed from the bottom line.
Okay, so it's 45,442, 593 minus 99.
Correct.
That's the number that we want.
Yeah.
Who's got it?
Somebody must have a spreadsheet.
I do.
I trust Bill.
45, 442, 593. It's 99,000. That gives us at
at
45, 343, 593.
All right, I move that we recommend approval of the total non-discretionary at 45, 343, 593.
Motion made by Mark, second by Karen, to approve the non-discretionary budget at the specified amount. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Do you know?
I don't know.
That's okay.
I actually think we need to change that because this spreadsheet doesn't have unemployment in it.
No,
Did you take it off of the,
the 125 is right there. line
were you
nine.
taking it off of this, Phil, or were you taking it off of the model?
He took
We
it
took it
off.
off.
Oh,
this.
you took it off of the scorecard?
Yeah.
Just under $100,000.
42,
Okay,
593.
perfect.
45,
And side
43.
note, the water purchase changed because we changed how we purchase our water from the MWR to become an assessor community. So I think that charge, how you were asking about the charge being changed in the upcoming year, it's going to impact water and sewer fees differently in the upcoming year.
I see. So the local receipts are going down, but why aren't our expenses going down commensurately?
The water purchase is going to be going down.
So I guess why aren't we modeling that?
I thought your question was that the model was reflecting that the assessment and the,
Well, the local receipts are going down by 7% is what I'm paying attention
which line were you?
to. Line 11.
Oh, I thought you were specifically asking about the water usage charges and the sewer charges. And I was connecting it back to the MWA charges. So I can follow up with the backup about the MWR purchase charges, but I can certainly send you a backup.
But do you see why I'm saying?
Yes.
I would think
Yes,
the two should balance each other out, and I'm
Yeah.
not seeing them do that. So
Yeah, okay.
That's more my question.
So you said the local receipts on these should offset these?
Well, these are the local receipts, right? And they're going down by 13 and 15%. But then where we purchase, but then the costs, the outflows to pay for it should go down commensurately with that as well.
These?
Yeah. See, they're not going down. Anyway, this is beside the point. But yeah, I'm just more, to Vincent's point, just looking at how all this rolls up to the,
Yeah, I feel a little disconnect between the spreadsheet and the scorecard. I like the scorecard as a summary tool, but
If it's accurate in some.
yeah, I need to play with it more to figure out what I'm saying. Voice of the text.
It would be, I hate to, just as a point of order, you know, some committees, we wind up coming in with motions kind of written out, like ready to read. If we want to vote on the budget, here's exactly what we should move. It might be helpful to have that.
I thought that's what the scorecard was.
That's what I thought too, but that extra level might be a chance for somebody to double check and avoid.
Matt and I were talking earlier today about if when we get to the end of this process next year, we have a finance director in place, if the scorecard then becomes like a final FY '27
Yeah,
column,
yeah.
and then it's just, for the select board, for instance, we just include recommended motions.
Yeah.
And if you want to change it on the fly, you change it on the fly, but at least it's no longer year-over-year columns, and it's just, this is your FY '27 column, and then you
Yeah,
can do
no,
that what you like.
I'm not trying to make work for people, but
But it's at least, it's one thing to focus on, and then the feedback over the scorecard's helpful, but yes, it's not nearly as helpful if you're still feeling like there's a disconnect between the new model and the scorecard.
Fortunately, we have some very eagle eyes and some very careful thinkers on this committee.
So the hours of work was done by some of the people in this room today to get this right.
And it's much appreciated.
Thanks, I'll go this way.
Well, that was the easy part of the work that Amy's been doing in these last months.
I have all the notes of stuff that's still missing. So we'll,
So how does it, one of the things that, like, I want to make sure we always keep in mind is it needs to work for us, but it mostly needs to work for you. We don't want to be the tail wagging the dog.
I'm sure
So-
that's that same question today, and see if you get the same answer.
So just, yeah, if we start with what works for you, and then we figure out how we need to massage it so that it works for us, that's more front of mind for me this year, so. Yeah, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I share this just as kind of like filling in and trying to be helpful in between,
Yeah.
knowing that like, I'm the one kind of helping out training finance directors as they come and go, hopefully not nearly as frequently as they have been.
You've been busy.
And then obviously Matt, so I, again, like apologize that not everything's been filled in. The scorecard, I think everyone agrees is helpful. Simplifying the model somewhat, I think is helpful for everyone. Having tabs on the bottom is always helpful, so people don't feel like they're always like deleting information or writing information over. For us, we have a new format of the budget book. I don't know if people found that they scrolled through that at all and found that helpful. I think some people like to read the backup, some people don't. They would rather just look at some of those spreadsheets as a summary. For us, for the most part, we have a handful of people in the finance department, including Brianna, like helping out with getting data from Eunice into the budget book modules that helps show department heads goals and objectives and what they're working on, which hopefully over time does show at least where we are trying to make efficiencies and where we're trying to cut some expenses. And if that's something we can add to, great. If that's not particularly helpful to you all from a narrative perspective, I think that's also good feedback. But for the most part, this isn't creating that much more work, right? Like it's just pulling the data. If you were to ask for us to take reports from this and then rearrange them a million times, I would tell you. Because if it's a one-time thing, of course a report is not going to print perfectly every single time. That's fine. It's like adjusting the board, you know? But we will certainly let you know if it's recreating the wheel every single meeting. But as of now, which is not.
Keep talking about this.
We should always keep talking.
Yeah, and I was,
There's nothing that can't be made better.
right. And you're doing this, you know, with some staff challenges and stuff. It's a big deal that you pull this off and put this up there, so.
The new, like, the financial model spreadsheet, it's your budget book format.
This is 100% new this year.
Yeah, this is brand new.
The financial software Munis, which is newer, works much better with the format of the budget book.
Does this get generated through Munis?
The data can get pulled out of Munis.
Because what I was going to say is what would be great is with this model next year, make this as your front page and then just link the bank so that you avoid what we've just gone through where it's like you just put it in one place and then it flows through.
Single source.
And I think long ago, the model started, and Karen and Ben might know this, like, the model did start as a linked document where it's like, you have a front page and a second and a third page, and I think it just expanded to be something more complicated, and then one person had their version, and another person had their version, and it just, and then some person liked it in one format, so it just became a little bit too overcomplicated, but I do think that if we can keep it to front page, second page, and then maybe your free cash cheat sheet, that's, you're working with all the data.
And then if we want to change it, like, we can do that offline.
Right,
but
make
it's
a
like,
copy and
that's
then you
our
can kind
call.
of work it.
There's one example of how bad the open model got. We actually, Karen will remember this, we actually added our own line numbers.
Yes, versus just using Excel.
Just, yeah, well,
we don't
the
have-
Excel ones might move, and we couldn't have that. Line 441 had to be line 441 for Aqua. And you know who that was. So.
We've got a PDF.
That's when I would say we're doing too much, guys.
I've been trying to recreate my own version in an Excel and go with those.
We're just bad links everywhere. Anyhow,
Anyhow, what's next on the agenda?
I think we're, at the moment, unless somebody wants to pitch a fit, we're done with the budget for the moment. Thank you very much. I know that was painful.
I'm very happy with where we landed.
The warrant, that,
in the previous. I'm always the book person here.
This is infinitely better. So,
Oh, I'm fine. I've got it right there, that's great. I have it at home.
I mean, recurring expenditures,
That's
that's 3%, that's not bad.
So what are we gonna try to,
well, here's what I'd like to do, and you guys can laugh
Jenny,
on
get
it.
back to you with this question.
With how we have everyone's attention.
Fantastic.
Yes, and
Waiting till we have everyone's attention.
But
So we have to have it. It's very nice, if not, I think it's required that we have an opinion on every article that's out there. There are 34 articles. There's no way we're doing 34 articles tonight because most, I can't explain to you what appropriations, especially as reserve fund, may or may not have and sort of information you want to know. But there are things we could take a position on. That's a suggestion. So we would like to take a stab at the warrant articles tonight or not. To me, taking a stab, means walk through them quickly and say, yes, here's our position, because it's so easy. Like reports of town officers and criminal, debate rules, consent ethics.
we want to,
Or do you want to just say,
we want to pick up the ones that are, we don't need to discuss and
yeah, that would be my approach. That sounds useful.
so, do you agree with anything?
If we're
Does
not,
anyone have any
if we're
questions
not
for
going to
me?
go down into the questions, which I think is a kiss of death to this one.
The only question I have is on this, is which ones are still moving targets? Because I know there are ones in here that are still moving targets.
So just to be clear, the select board have not made any recommendations other than the fact that they always will make their recommendation for bills of the prior year, which is Article 34 at town meeting. But they will be starting to make recommendations at the next meeting. We want to wait then?
That's
But,
kind of what I-
so just to be clear, for instance, you could still make recommendations on reports, debate rules, consent. You've heard the capital plan as of now, you've heard community preservation, you just voted on the operating budget. You know, like you could do your recommendations for 15 and we could start adding some of that language to our draft warrant because it does help to share that with, you know, the other committees that are also reviewing the warrant. There are a few that I know, or my suggestion would be, you will be making recommendations at town meeting, such as the union negotiations, because we have not settled with the police patrol as an example. So that's an easy one. Article 12, Article 34,
Right now, all of them
Things
are
like that.
recommended town meeting. That's the default state.
yeah. But those ones will most likely stay recommended town meeting because we will likely not settle with police and.
Right, no, I just going after the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
one, we just didn't have the time to get to.
Yeah.
They default to recommend.
so Amy, before you move, would you be willing to again just rattle off, like, it's almost like a consent agenda, right? Like ones
Yeah.
that really shouldn't require
The ones that
much discussion,
are,
if you rattle them off, we can say
Yes.
so moved.
Article 1, reports of town officers. Article 2, debate rules. Article 3, consent, which is, you know, discussion of how long everyone's going to take. 4 is revolving fund expenditure limits.
Are you getting these?
Try it.
Which is housekeeping. There will be a slight adjustment for one, there will be a, DPW as an example, will recommend an increase of some tens of thousands of dollars for a revolving fund expenditure limit,
That's
which
not
isn't set yet.
Let me just slow down. As a point of order for our beloved minute taker, we try to get in the habit of not listing them, not just saying I move Article 4 because they can hop around even at the end. So just having kind of a quick, Article 4, about the revolving funds or whatever, having that, but that's a lot for you to write as well. But Amy, you're doing great. Keep going.
We could do community preservation, we could budget.
If you are comfortable with the community preservation budget, correct.
We could do capital projects, when we put that. I'm just looking at things
Yep.
as either heard or we know.
So that gives you 1 through 7.
Capital, capitals all set? The capital bonds all set?
We ended up, Matt and I decided to pull out 3 of the projects that you were presented on during the capital plan to make sure that the free cash figure brought you to that 50% free cash margin. Because once we added in the Shawshene Valley request and then the school's special, their $300,000 transfer, it brought us over that 50% threshold of free cash usage, so we ended up bonding a couple of the capital projects. And they have to be 50% and then 2 years of those, so they'll just be 2 different formats.
So if anyone, we're trying to go through a list of things that are absolutely easy. If anybody is uncomfortable, say hold.
And real quick, sorry, on the bonds, is that going to push us into a problematic place for
It is a very small amount, so it has a very minimal impact on any of the plan for next year. Yeah.
Is that when you voted about that? In the town meeting?
Voted by town meeting.
Using bond for that amount?
Yeah, so they will vote it as 2 separate votes. One for the use of free cash or one article, and then an entirely different,
Cash requires
Yeah.
a majority, and bond requires 2/3, right?
Okay, so let's include 6 and 7, the 2 capital projects plan, and PEG access.
I'm not sure if you all have had a discussion about PEG. I don't want to speak for you all if you're comfortable with special ed or special ed.
I think we move ahead as quickly as possible.
Article 12,
We're not going to include PEG, we're not going to include special ed.
so 1 through 7, and then most likely, I would say Article 11 is the 2.5% increase for non-union salaries. That was part of Matt's operating budget presentation. Article 13 was the operating budget that you just voted on.
What's the,
Let's skip the
elected
citizens.
body? What are they asking for rates?
What's that?
What are they asking for?
Since we're in bargaining, we can't discuss where we're at currently in terms of what their requests are, but what we can do is we're in negotiations right now with Patrol, and by the time we go to town meeting, we'll be able to say what we actually settled.
More or less what you have.
We can't discuss bargaining right now, but I will say the select board have been very good telling the town manager their expectations in terms of wanting the unions to be more, like, the unions and non-unions to be aligned with that same 2.5% to 3%. So we were very open during our presentation with you all that that's still the expectation.
So it doesn't get settled by, it will likely get settled by town.
It will likely get settled by town meeting. What we have done occasionally is if it doesn't get settled by town meeting, sometimes we will put in a placeholder of where we are close to settling to have that amount approved. Because we're almost at the end, and then knowing that it would only be approved, we would only settle up to that amount. And Matt, of course, could speak to, that we're close to settling, and that has happened occasionally. But it is our goal to.
I want to remind everyone, time we spend on this now is time we don't spend on it later. Quarter to 9, 10 minutes to 9, so I'd like to get moving through this, but it's entirely up to you all how you want to go on. I know it's possible to not die down, but no, I just, ask all you want, it's just.
So we've got 1 through 7, we've got 11 that we feel good about.
I think 13 is good, we're right.
We've got 13 that we just voted on.
11,
let's-
12, potentially. Or recommendation at town meeting if you said that it's not settled. I think that's it,
I
right?
mean, I think we're just
Oh, that's it.
settled, we're not ready to.
But we're all going to be thorough, until we get a
But we can, but in terms of the motion that we're putting together right now for what we consider the not ones that don't need discussion beyond here, and we can, next week, we could vote to change our recommendation as well.
15 is one, we could do these.
We can definitely do 15, so please add 15 to the motion.
16 is usually very straightforward, but I don't know.
If we don't have the numbers, let's not do it tonight.
OPEB, we do know the number is 5% of our policy.
And we've always voted to recommend that, so let's include Article 17 in the motion.
Trust you, Kevin, there's tons of information there, but it's really quick. She's a good answer, it's about 20 minutes of the select board meeting.
Right.
Hero Act, everyone knows, approving investor rules organized. Article 56, we're going to do charter amendments and charter bylaws. Those are just going to be announced.
Oh my God, please, not again.
Appropriate the 300th anniversary for us to judge that.
What's that, the 300th anniversary, which one's that?
I think Bill 33 and 34 is Bill priority.
What's the priority?
That means if we randomly discover that we have not paid a bill in the prior year, you actually have to bring it to town meeting to approve a bill that's from the previous fiscal year.
Lexington one time didn't bill us for water for a couple of years. They discovered it like 3 years later, I think.
Did they find bills in the elevator thing?
That was been before my time. I don't know, it's a horrible, embarrassing thing if you have to stand there and say, we did not pay a bill from 5 years ago. So normally there's nothing there. One time there was a random utility bill about 5 years ago that we had to pay, so hopefully there will be.
One thing, I've never seen this bill before, so
Yes.
This is every year.
So normally it's actually at the beginning of, yeah, it's always indefinite.
So we've included Articles 33 and 34
Yeah.
in our motion.
Yeah,
So
this right
this is
now-
about a dozen, let's let Ben rattle it off, make sure that you caught it, and then I'll make the motion.
This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, 13, 15, 17, 33, 34.
For 34, why would we approve or support that? Like, isn't that, like, especially if
It's
there's
gonna
like,
be indefinitely postponed, I'm gonna say you have to agree to that.
I thought 4 was not set.
but wouldn't we want to say that at town meeting?
Are you making a motion to recommend approval, or are you making a motion to recommend approval at town meeting?
I'm intending to make a motion that the Finance Committee recommend approval of this list of articles that we're listing. So if we want to leave off 34, that's fine.
I mean, the default for every one of these is recommended town meeting, because we don't know, and that's what we recommended. So anything we can pull out of recommended APM is something we can just go straight into the warrant.
Right. But it sounds like we don't want to recommend approval of Article 34 if we're expecting it to be indefinitely postponed. So let's scratch 34.
Scratch 34 off the list. I'd scratch 4 off the list, because we don't know the numbers, but
Yeah, I would.
I suppose if you're comfortable that the numbers can't be outrageous.
I'd say if it's changing, let's just wait. I'd
Sure.
rather not approve something that's
So let's
changing.
scratch 4.
1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 11, 13, 15, 17, and 34.
I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of the articles just listed by Ben.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That long list, which I'm not going to read again, I'm going to recommend approval at town meeting.
And if we change our mind on one of those next week, we can change our
Let's
minds.
change our mind. That's always true. So, unless somebody wants to delve into this some more, I'm not sure we can squeeze more through on this one.
But let's decide, are we going to divvy up write-ups?
We are, I think it's.
And what's our deadline?
Town meeting,
I mean, write-ups to be published in advance of town.
I don't have a schedule because I didn't know how far we were going to get. I think we're riding right on the edge.
Have we mentioned that we should push back town meeting?
It's been a Jim C. time.
The select board meeting next Tuesday, the next one. It's being a public hearing.
So here's what I found very comfortable doing. take a look at this list, and if any that catch your eye, remember at our next meeting, we'll sign them and go through them. But at our next meeting, we'll have to review them back and by, and answer all the million questions we're going to have.
Yep. And I'll send him an email with the stuff that he needs to add to the model, and then his plan is to attend your next meeting and then discuss any warrant articles that he can add some clarification to help with it.
My fear is that our next meeting is actually school vacation, which is the next meeting.
School vacation week is next week.
What's that?
On the 19th.
If we do the 23rd, it has to be the 26th. It was the 19th. So yeah, next week is no meeting.
But your plan is to meet on the 26th?
Yeah, because we're at the many meetings that we can possibly do with somebody want to add an extra meeting. So think about that too, we had an extra meeting, we did that, what, 3 years ago, 2 years ago?
Yeah, we've done that.
I think we can figure that out and say if we leave on our plan for next week.
I'm around next
I'm
week.
just laying on all the possibilities. Well, we don't need to use the school vacation because we do a bunch of these kids and want to go on vacation. It doesn't work.
I sent my kids off, one's in Colorado, one's in California, we've got a vacation for the grown-ups.
Yeah, we've got almost a month, so
Yeah.
the 23rd is tonight.
Did you catch all those numbers? I have a feeling you're going to end up writing them all down.
Because 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 11, 13, 15, 17, 33.
Bingo.
4, 7, 9, 10, 12, 14, 15, 34 whole.
And then the trick is just to tie those numbers to the warrant as it exists at this moment.
You can just email me.
Because, yeah.
So next thing is warrant review. Yeah. Wait for everyone's attention. We all set? I think we're done with the warrant review. Does anyone want to do anything else with the warrant at this point? It seems to be coming productive, but make an idea. Minutes. This is the 12th, so we have minutes from the 5th, I think. Am I right on that?
Yeah, February 5th.
So we want to make a motion about accepting the minutes.
I reviewed these earlier, I'm just scanning through them one more time. I didn't see anything
I'm
that
going to
jumped
give
out at
it
me.
once again say thank you, Brianna.
Absolutely.
We're really good.
So I move that the February 5th Finance Committee minutes with deep gratitude to Brianna be entered into the record.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, minutes are accepted. I think that means we're actually even caught up, which is a
Oh,
good
yeah.
place to be. That's a very good place to be. Meetings attended. Now,
Oh, I do, sorry, I do have one question.
fire away.
We updated our policies on the 50% free cash thing.
I thought we did, but I can never find it on town webpage.
Yeah, so I found an old
It's usually
version.
under town manager's.
Okay.
I know we did it.
I have
Still
the, I
highlighted.
have the version that you all re-voted in December 2025, so if it hasn't been updated on the website, I can update that.
It's always on the website, okay, I was always looking in Dropbox.
Oh.
That messes me up.
We should keep it in one place though, you're right. So
I thought,
that's a
I
better
can check.
idea.
I thought it was on your Dropbox, but let me check.
It is, it's just our Dropbox has a number of ID holders.
I think this makes more sense.
Oh, I
to put it
closed
on
the tab.
Oh.
Try the Excel and go back.
Well, wait a minute, I think it makes more sense to have it on the website.
We can add it on the website too.
We should have one copy of it though, the latest finance, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Well, you can't, I don't know if you can get there with the town's website, but it keeps older
I
documents.
closed the one tab, but that'll
Like I was looking at 2003 warrant the other day, and that's all you asked for. I was reading 2003.
I mean, I'll ask you why later.
Yeah.
But yes, we can, if it's not on your website, I can make sure there's a link.
Because in Dropbox, I need to know, like, kind of, I need to know which month to go to find the latest copy.
Well, we don't use Dropbox as
So
efficiently as we could.
in the policies folder,
But we do use it.
Bedford Financial Policies,
Maybe.
121025.
Oh, okay.
This version includes your free cash policy, your revenue policy, your reserve
What
policy.
does it actually say? Looks like
Yeah,
approximately 50%, so yes.
the one I have is still being updated.
Well, somebody was nervous about the fact that we weren't exactly 50%, and I said, don't worry, it's a plus or minus. And I think personal opinion, approximately covers 53% or 51% or whatever.
It would also be good to get an update from how the rating statements are called. I was curious how much they look at the policies or do they look at them? No, they definitely do. I mean, the last few calls that our treasurers had with them, we recently got a spreadsheet where they were kind of outlining some debt figures and we felt very positive about everything. But I'm happy to have an include an update at the next meeting when he attends.
Meetings attended, Alan.
I listened to the school board meeting,
I heard it was well attended.
well attended.
Nothing that affects us.
What?
Nothing that affects us. Though.
No, interesting.
Well, that's almost a given in the school community.
Absolutely.
Really?
Nothing of any substance or
No. Karen? Mark?
I attended the first half of the school committee meeting, nothing that concerned us.
Tom? Vincent? Nope. George? I went to select board Monday night for a couple of things of interest. The design funding for the Neshoba Valley Technical High School, we're about to spend. Remember, I'm repeating what I heard. It's a preliminary number. I don't stand behind it after repeating what I heard. They're looking at perhaps adding a, going to a $400 million project for the building the high school. $400 million for the Neshoba. This is Dick Neshoba.
Yeah, I know.
And what's our
It
share?
impacts us because the design will be $40 million and we will own 10% of the design cost.
Oh.
Do we have like 10% of the students there or something? How do
We
we-
don't, but I think we, I don't know, whether we think we
We
22.
what we carry 22% of the charge.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So I think you call it the show off.
I can share the spreadsheet that they gave the presentation, which gives the breakdown of, just curious.
Because we,
It sounds
our
like it's
assessment is
overdue.
higher than the number of kids because we actually have kids.
Yeah, our assessment was higher than other communities, but they break out the proportion of kids and then our assessment, and there's a formula associated with it.
This was built in the 70s. Nothing's been done to it since. I mean, it's in really need, but $400 million may be choke.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that was a discussion, there was a discussion of paying for the design. There's like 75 steps, so I said, decision between now and we have to come to grips with how to fund this. There was a public hearing for a new restaurant in town, which had nothing to do with finances, really, but I thought you might be interested. Where Bamboo was, will be Sam Walker's American Tavern. The big thing that was presented was the future use of Springfield Park, where it's going, what they're thinking of it. They're thinking all over the place. We've read some of the CPC stuff, it's not really into the pool, some of the cultural, going all over the place with active discussion. CPA budget, and that's roughly it, these things.
Where in our 6-year plan is that potential dune to shopping, right? Where is that? The construction funding? Yeah.
It's so far out.
It's not anywhere. It
Hopefully
was,
we'll all
the
be there.
feasibility study was obviously just added from a free cash perspective. That's why, one of the reasons why we just adjust on the free cash figures. All 5 communities would have to take a debt exclusion vote on the same day and would pass on the same day in order to move forward to see if the MSBA is going to give us funding to move forward with a $400+ million school project. Best case has to be put in.
6 or 7 years.
Yeah, a handful of years out.
And And there was no vote taken.
And I don't say that like lighthearted, I mean, it's truly like, I said in a meeting a year ago, and, you know, one of the members of the, you know, group consortium was like, does anyone want to volunteer to pay for $1 million feasibility study? And we kind of all just said, what are you talking about? You know, like, you can't just spring this on us. And then the next conversation was, okay, how do we divide the feasibility study, and what does that look like? And then, you know, these figures are kind of just divided amongst the community.
But it sounds like you're in the loop, and as soon as there's any development.
Oh, absolutely. As soon as we get any real figures, it will certainly be starting to discuss. And also from a rating agency perspective, they ask us things like, do you have a large project coming down the road that we can plug in for you? And as funny as it sounds, they're like, give us an imaginary number. You know, if it is a construction project and it's $20 million 5 years down the road, well, let's plug that in for you. So that's a perfect example of, it's not even coming in Bedford, but we are going to have a debt exclusion for X number of millions of dollars, and they will start helping us plan for that.
But we have two representatives on the school committee for the technical aspect. So we're pretty tied in. One is Sarah Dora, and they're really good about tying us in. They showed up on Monday night. So yes, we will always hear. The principal's a good guy to that point, of course. They're pretty proactive.
Very reassuring. Yep, that's it.
Don't hold anyone to that.
Well, that's the
There's
problem.
real numbers and then there's budget numbers.
And then there was a sheet that went up on the slides with, I think, 3 rows of flowchart. And there were like 10 or 12 boxes on it. And each of those boxes was really big task to be accomplished here, like get all the funding, things of that scale. And there were 12 boxes. So they had a big road ahead of them. I wanted to take a high school. If we just sold some property on those next term like this, town of it. And a team to town of it. 350,000 square feet, $1 million. I want to call up the trash union and say, hey, I got a building for you.
Yeah.
Save a lot of money. Anyhow.
I don't know, I think this stuff merits, I wouldn't mind doing a paper on this topic. That last meeting sounded pretty interesting.
You did this last week.
It's a joke, yeah.
Okay, anyhow, I was.
It's not a joke. I look at these minutes, and I mean, I like to move things along, but I look at the minutes, and it's like this guy Bailey is always.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I was trying to give you a chance to do your motion.
I know, and I'm sick of it, man.
Well, then I'll stop.
Great. You want to vote on that motion?
I got a dog to work.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained,
Mark, no longer doing the motion.
meeting over at 9:00.
Go stop in the meeting,